A challenge in medicine is that none of us are taught how to lead. And yet doctors just step up. They just step up and they do it intuitively, and they do the absolute best in the setting of these really challenging healthcare clinical environments. When you have a colleague or a loved one, a friend, your partner experiencing that distress, that reaction that comes very understandably, how would you show up currently for them?
My instant reaction as a total empath, there's something happening, and the emotion could be anything from, like you say, being teary, being upset, but also things like disappointment, anger, frustration, any emotion that is not like pleasant for me to be around. I kind of want to fix it so that I feel more comfortable.
It is the emotions that kind of grab your attention in the first moment, isn't it? They feel like an emotional emergency. And in so many ways, they are the most important thing. Like, what is more important than the experience that they're having in their life? If you are making the goal to make their distress go away because you're super uncomfortable with it, you're going to be investing your energy in a solution that probably doesn't exist.
In this scenario, like a colleague who's upset at work for some reason, I feel like the things that are important when you're going through that and the things you really need are to be validated, for there to be no judgment, for the emotion and the experience you're having to be normalized. Maybe not, the situation might not be normal, but the fact that you're emotional about it doesn't make you abnormal, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Leadership 101, don't invalidate somebody, right? Don't shush it, don't dismiss it. We make up some story about how it's some terrible thing to have an emotional reaction to something. That actually, at the same time, it's important to feel your emotions, but at the same time, it's no big deal to feel your emotions. This energy that moves through your body, you express it, and then life moves on. When we don't have that experiential understanding for ourselves, then we cannot allow this situation for other people. You will be terrified of somebody else having an emotional reaction. You'll believe that once they have the emotion, they'll never stop having it. And with that, you'll also believe if they start having the emotion, then I need to fix it.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors.
Hello, our beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, and welcome back to the potty. Today, this episode is particularly for you if you are somebody who has ever said to yourself, ever aspired within yourself, this goal that a lot of my clients actually come to me with, which is wanting to be that not only effective and impactful leader, but a positive leader, which is a term I keep hearing from different spaces. A positive leader. And with that, usually when I ask my clients to elaborate, what they mean by that is being somebody who has a positive influence on their team. When they walk into the room, when they enter the space, the team feels a bit better. They feel a bit more empowered. And also they're the kind of leader who can handle the tough stuff, you know, when your staff or when the rest of your clinical team or anybody on your clinical team is struggling, they're having a bad day, as we all do, particularly in medicine, particularly in a really challenging healthcare environment. They want to be the kind of person who makes those situations better, even the hardest situations. And this might be because you are a practice owner and you're managing staff who are not only doctors, but also you've got that mix of nurses and the administration staff and everybody else who is involved. There's a lot going on. We were talking about this in Dear Darling with somebody who stepped up into a senior registrar role just in that clinical unit that we know so well from the hospital. We sort of without consent end up being in these leadership positions in medicine, whether we like it or not. And a lot of you guys that I get to work with, you come to these positions with really high gorgeous expectations of yourself and the kind of leader that you want to be. However, a challenge in medicine is that none of us are taught how to lead. None of us are taught how to be those effective or positive leaders that we want to be. None of us are taught any of the management skills that, in other professions and the corporate side of things, there's extensive and endless training. It's one of the most common roles as a coach to be coaching the executives and the managers, the leaders of organizations, because it truly is such a challenging job and really a specialty in itself. And yet doctors just step up. They just step up and they do it intuitively, and they do the absolute best in the setting of these really challenging healthcare clinical environments. So we want to help you guys out a little bit today, especially you guys with the absolute best intentions, and bring you a couple of challenging scenarios that have come up, whether it's been from coaching and in Dead Darling, in terms of being the leader that we want to be. But also, I can certainly draw some examples from my personal life where I have been challenged by difficult scenarios that have come up because of medicine and really made me step back and question, who do I want to be in this moment? What's the right thing for me to do in this moment to be either the leader that I want to be or just be the support person that I want to be? Because if we don't get this right, there are two things that can go wrong. One of them is we can accidentally pour an incredible amount of energy into trying to create solutions for our team that don't offer any useful progress. All it does is deplete us more and more and more. It has us sacrifice not only time into these false solutions, but also a lot of energy into trying to fix this problem that was kind of the wrong diagnosis in the first place. The second part of this problem is not just that over-investment and the way that it depletes us, but when we have that problem misdiagnosed, it can actually distract us from being that leader that we want to be, from being that support person, from being that best version of ourselves in this scenario, because we had the diagnosis wrong in the first place. So Christine and I, we're going to drop you into 3 different scenarios today to think about how you currently show up. These are real life scenarios. I want you to just take a couple minutes here, reflect for yourself. Either how have you seen yourself show up in these scenarios, or how do you think you would show up sort of by default, by way of automaticity in these scenarios based on what you think a leader or a support person should do. So the first one is you are leading the clinical team, right? You're the consultant, you're a couple of registrars, you're a couple of junior doctors. I don't like that term. You've got your couple of residents and interns on the team with you here, and you have found that your senior registrar is having a really bad day. They've dropped into it. There's a straw that broke the camel's back. They are sleep deprived. They have got tasks stacking up, and and something else has gone wrong. They've got 3 different people needing their attention at one moment, and suddenly they have lost their ability to hold it all together. And that comes out in emotion. Bang in the middle of your clinical day, you're busy as well. How do you, as the consultant in that situation, respond? Second scenario, slightly different. You are the senior resident in an incredibly busy O&G department. You've got not 1, not 2, but 5 different emergencies going on at one time that all need your attention, split between you, the senior registrar, and your 2 other people on your team. At that time, your next most senior team member, it's 3 a.m., has broken down in tears. They need your attention. You care about them. You want them to be okay, and you certainly don't want them to be left alone in that moment. And also, your attention needs to be in multiple other places. How do you respond? What is the right way for you when you think about being that leader, including being that support person as a leader? How do you show up? What would you think is the right way to show up in that scenario? And finally, this is from my own life. I lived through plastic surgery training with my partner, and I've never seen anything more brutal in my life. To be honest, I didn't believe him when we first started dating. He was telling me about how hard he worked. It wasn't until we moved in together that I was like, oh my goodness, he was not exaggerating. This was all true. He was telling the truth. All of it's real. And so many times with, I swear, negative energy in his tank, the next thing would go wrong. The next thing would come up. He'd be called in for this. This problem would explode. This urgent thing would happen. And of course, he would have anything from frustration to anger to defeatedness come up for him in that scenario. For me, just thinking about being that support person for that person in medicine in this sometimes absolutely unfathomable healthcare system, I had to decide, how did I want to show up for him in that space? When you have a colleague or a loved one, a friend, your partner in that scenario, in that impossible scenario, and then experiencing that distress, that reaction that comes very understandably, how would you show up currently for them? So there are 3 scenarios. Dropping in, seeing where you're at, no judgment at all. And Christine, let's talk about it.
Oh, these are juicy, aren't they? To answer that question on the spot is actually really difficult. You almost like have to be dropped in to the real life scenario, don't you? Because it's like I get jammed up thinking, oh, not today. The way you described that, I was like, oh man, oh goodness me. We've been there, right? I think all of us can relate to having already experienced something like this, but also maybe experiencing that no matter what you did in the moment, it might have not even felt like the right thing, or you might not have made a big impact. But I think what comes up for me is there's probably a couple of different ways to manage this. But my instant reaction as a total empath is, oh God, there's like an emotional human, there's something happening. And the emotion could be anything from, like you say, being teary, being upset, but also things like disappointment, anger, frustration, like any emotion that is not like pleasant for me to be around because I'm feeling it too. I kind of want to end that scenario. I want to fix it, like solve the problem immediately, so it just kind of stops, halts, so that I feel more comfortable. I think that is what actually the truth of it is. I'm not saying that that is how I would always respond, like having a little bit more insight and a little bit more experience in these things, I might choose a different path. But I think that is my natural, what you call like your automatic response, is trying to put a band-aid on it, fix it, somehow soothe it. I think soothe it. I have a great discomfort with human suffering, which, you know, choosing medicine, what an interesting path. My tolerance for human suffering is very, very low. And I have this thing where I just want to fix everything. But in medicine at large, and in these scenarios that you've spoken about, it's not really a matter of there always being a fix. And is it even your job to fix it? So I'm so curious as to your automatic response to those scenarios as well, Beck. What would you do?
That's really why I wanted to pitch this at the empathetic leader, the person who wants to be that positive leader, because it is the emotions that kind of grab your attention in the first moment, isn't it? They feel like, Christine and I just dropped into this term earlier, they feel like an emotional emergency. They feel like the most important thing. And in so many ways, they are the most important thing. Like, what is more important for a human being than the experience that they're having in their life? What is more important, truly, than how any of us are feeling at any one moment? The rest of the world, the rest of the logistics of everything, and the we should be doing this and that and the other, there's sort of these shoulds. They're these idealistic kind of, I would like my day to go in way. But what really matters, and we know this from relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships, what matters is how people feel. What matters is how other people make you feel and how you make other people feel. That's how people are going to decide whether like you're their people or not, whether they want to be around you or not, whether you want to be around them or not. How people feel is so much really of our connection and communication as people. And I think the fact that you're the kind of person who, you say it's like, oh gosh, how silly that I would come and be a doctor when I'm so intolerable of other people suffering. Go into medicine. And it's the reason why so many of us have such high pain thresholds really for medicine. It's why we can sacrifice so much and keep going and keep fighting and do all the overtime and the sleep deprivation, is because we have that driver. We actually care about the fact that people are suffering. So I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm delighted, honored to meet any clinician who still has that fire in their belly that keeps them trying to relieve other people's suffering. Because also something that you referenced was this desire with that to just make the suffering go away as quickly as possible, specifically because it's so uncomfortable for us. But the truth is, a lot of the suffering that happens, it's not fixable. Certainly when we talk about human emotions, they're not fixable. None of us are getting to a point of emotional mastery that we won't suffer with human emotional experiences in our life, not as a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 90-year-old. We're all still going to have this emotional suffering. This is something that's often misinterpreted from Stoicism, which is something that I deeply appreciate. But a lot of people these days take Stoicism to talk about being completely unemotional. And that is a misunderstanding of even this philosophy that is, most of us would think is quintessentially not being emotional. But what the Stoics really are talking about with all their wisdom is not being automatically driven by these emotions, not letting our emotions be these automatic drivers of our behavior. And instead, what they're really talking about is more of an emotional intelligence, emotional mastery that allows us to have these emotions come up for ourselves and with that for other people, and not have some kind of automatic reaction dictate our behavior. And that is what we want to offer to you guys here today too. Because remember, we've set this scene. You are this caring, empathetic leader, and you want to be a positive influence in your team. You cannot do that if you are going to choose to be completely oblivious to or uncaring about the emotional experiences of those on your team, especially not in healthcare, because we will constantly be challenged. What we need to do is first develop that skill that Christine's already referenced, which is our ability to be present with another person's distress without it causing so much distress in us that we need to do something to just make it go away. For those two reasons that we mentioned at the start, right? One is because if you are making the goal to make their distress go away because you're super uncomfortable with it, you're going to be investing your energy in a solution that probably doesn't exist. There's not much you can do, even as the most caring person in that moment, to quote, make that emotion go away. We need to not make that our goal. And with that, we want to step back. If we can sit together and collectively accept that fact, I cannot make this go away. Now the next question becomes, so who do I want to be in this moment for them and for myself? Let me just give you that example from my personal life, just to crack this open a little bit. A part of the reason why I struggled so much with my partner having these distressing emotions was, yes, because, I cared about him and I didn't want to see him in pain. But that truly is just the superficial level of it, right? Because why didn't I want to see him in pain? It's because it made me uncomfortable. This is really important because I want you to look at this in the scenarios in your life. If you remain uncomfortable with other people having negative emotions, you got to watch how that makes you behave. Christine talked about that urge to fix it so that you feel better. Here, because I was so uncomfortable with him having these negative emotions, I would do the same thing too. I'd be like, oh, okay, what can I do? What can I offer you? Or what can I say? What can I change so that you feel better, so that I feel better? That is completely me focused, right? I'm trying to make his emotion, his frustration, for example, go away because I feel so uncomfortable with it. Instead of starting from that primary question of really sitting and empathizing with him, what's going on with him right now? What does he need right now? With that hypothesis, what could be useful for me to do right now? And it's so annoying for me to find out again and again and again that literally just sitting there, giving him a space with no judgment, with no impatience, with no hurry, to just express that frustration or that disappointment with whatever has happened, or the dread of going back in for your 40-second hour of not sleeping, to just let him have that experience and for me to do nothing. That was a devastating realization for me, because you know how that made me feel at first? It brought up all these thoughts about me being more powerless and more useless and more unable to make a difference in the situation. It was even harder for me to do nothing. And it also meant that I just had to sit there and wait out until whenever this emotional distress started to ease. I had to admit that I had no power here. But see the difference there in the way that you respond to somebody in distress when you're trying to come at it from a place of, I need this distress to go away. You start doing things that are more selfishly for you versus what do they need? And you might actually find that you have to work a lot harder to do, quote, less in this scenario. You're smiling, Christine, that resonates.
Oh, it so resonates. And I loved what you said about, like, basically there being nothing. Because when you said, what's the useful thing that I can do? What do they need me to do? And what came up is, like, often there's probably nothing. But then what you actually said was creating a space with no judgment, no hurry, I think is the word you used. Just like space and time and just being there. And that was the correct answer for what your partner needed. And I guess it was making me reflect on what works for me and what I found works for other people that I've maybe have supported in this scenario, like a colleague who's upset at work for some reason. I feel like the things that are important when you're going through that and the things you really need are to be validated, for there to be no judgment, for the emotion and the experience you're having to be normalized. Maybe not, the situation might not be normal, but the fact that you're emotional about it doesn't make you abnormal, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And that you're having a normal response to whatever just happened or the situation you're in, the pressure cooker that you're in. And then I think that kind of empowerment of the person as well is, there is a way to react to this where you might try to shush it, make the emotion go away. I wouldn't necessarily expect anyone listening to be doing that, but I guess just thinking of the polar opposite of what's helpful is not validating it, making them feel othered, making them feel weak or something because they're having an emotion. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got your answers of what's actually useful, and that person's more likely to, feel free to express the emotion, but when they come to work the next day, they're going to feel different. And they're not going to be carrying around as much baggage as if they had had an experience where someone didn't validate them, did judge them. What you do in that moment actually does matter. And so I think it's really great to be talking about this with, obviously like-minded Dr. Humans listening. And even if you're not in a leadership position right now, like Beck was saying, you're going to be in one at some point, and this is going to happen to you in some respects, be it at home or at work. And so I think it's just so powerful, because what we actually do as a support person or the leader in that situation, it has such an impact at the time, but also in the days and weeks and months that follow.
And I'd just like to say, it sounds really obvious to not shush or invalidate the experience that somebody's going through. It sounds so obvious, like emotions, relationships 101, leadership 101, don't invalidate somebody, right? Don't shush it, don't dismiss it. But when you're in this mindset of I need to fix it, this is so often what this just accidentally, innocently leads us to. We'll do things that feel really productive, like minimizing or even rationalizing what somebody's going through. That example of being on the night shift with the senior registrar, what happened was one of their next most junior person, they'd set them all up for this great opportunity to practice the skill, right? Awesome opportunity. They were stoked, so excited to do it. They had that opportunity taken away because another emergency came up that now meant, okay, their hands needed to be somewhere else. What you can easily do if you're just trying to fix their emotion, make that emotion go away, make that, I want to acknowledge that as a grief. There's been a loss here. They had an opportunity. We all know what it's like to feel the pressure of trying to build up our skills, build up our competence. And actually, it can be really disappointing and feel like a significant loss to lose one of these precious opportunities where you're like, I could have just been building myself in this moment. So it's not a small deal, particularly when you start to project into the future and say, when am I going to get the next opportunity? How am I possibly going to get all of this stuff done in this time period to come? How am I possibly ever going to be good enough? How am I going to then perform in my exam and pass my exam and da-da-da-da? You can see how this quickly becomes a really significant issue. But if we're in the position where we just want to make the emotion go away, you know what we can easily say? It's no big deal. You'll get another opportunity. You've got plenty of time. You could argue that rationally, that's true. Totally. You can see that it has a more potentially neutral emotional stance. And if they could embody these thoughts, if they could take on this perspective, that they would feel better. And as positively intended as that is, totally dismissing the loss that they had in that moment, which is also perfectly valid. And so I think we often can think that invalidating people and trying to smother and dismiss these kind of big emotional reactions is a really kind and productive and loving thing to do, and that it's just helpful. But again, we've got to recognize that this is, even with the best intentions, it's easily invalidating what's actually happening. This is what we do accidentally when we just want other people's emotions to go away. People in healthcare, we still have a pretty rudimentary understanding of how emotions work and how to manage emotions. Most of us think it's still more about suppression, to the point that most of us will even misinterpret Stoicism from that perspective, when instead emotions are something that I want you guys to think about as essentially harmless. And I know it sounds counterintuitive because we've also just said in this episode, they're also the most important thing for humans. I think full stop, end of story. How we feel, our experience is the most important thing. And at the same time, just because they're important, it doesn't mean they are something that is incredibly urgent for us to attend to, or that we need to change to get ourselves back into a better emotional state. But instead, certainly what I've learned about emotions, and I know you have too, Christine, is that when you view your emotions as really, really important and precious, but also totally harmless, and in so many ways, I'm even going to go so far as saying not that important, then you'll start to treat them really differently. You'll start to honor them from the perspective of, I want this emotion to come up I want to experience this emotion from a perspective of respecting myself as a person, because emotions are really important. Acknowledging and not dismissing, not hiding the experience that I'm having and what matters to me. You know, we're having an emotion because some kind of value set behind it. But then at the same time, not making emotions so important that we're afraid of them. We make up some story about how it's some terrible thing to have an emotional reaction to something. That actually at the same time, it's important to feel your emotions, but at the same time, it's no big deal to feel your emotions. It is no big deal to feel intense sadness. It is no big deal to feel intense frustration or anger. It's just this blip in your human timeline, this experience that comes up, this energy that moves through your body. You express it, and then life moves on. But so many of us don't have that experience because we've never even gotten ourselves to the point that we let the emotion come up. So we also don't get to learn that that emotion will come up and then it will just dissipate. And when we don't do that for ourselves, when we don't have that experiential understanding for ourselves, then we cannot allow this situation for other people. You will be terrified of somebody else having an emotional reaction because you will believe what you believe about yourself when it comes to emotion. You will believe that it's the worst thing that could happen to them. It's so uncomfortable and so distressing. You'll believe that once they have the emotion, they'll never stop having it. And with that, you'll also believe if they start having the emotion, then I need to fix it. Right? So you see the problem? So ultimately, the solution to this is you need to do your own work on emotions so that you can debunk these beliefs about the problems of somebody else having these emotions. If you want to be a good leader, you're not going to get to avoid emotions. You're not going to get to avoid emotions, certainly in yourself, but in the rest of your team. And so we are highly encouraging you to start with this work on emotions on yourself.
I love that, Beck. I love everything that you just said. And I think it really cracks open a whole new way to be, is when you start to really normalize this process and really just plan ahead. I think there's a lot of power in sort of dropping yourself into those scenarios and sort of thinking like, how would I actually manage these things? You know, how would I approach that? And having a little bit of a think about what you said in your head at the start, and then maybe how that's changed, you know, how that's actually transformed as we've gone through this conversation. Like, do you think that maybe there would be slight tweaks in what you would say? Maybe you won't reach for the sort of, I want to see toxic positivity, like, oh, you get another opportunity, oh, you'll be fine, like, shush, shush, shush. You won't reach for that. You're probably going to be less likely to avoid it. You'd be more likely to create a space and hold space for that person now, or certainly I will be after this conversation. So thank you so much for this conversation, Beck. It's always beautiful to unpack things and also have a think about, just how we're going to show up and plan how we're going to lead. I think it's super useful. So I hope everyone listening has really benefited from this conversation, and we want you to go forth, Dr. Humans, best leaders in the whole world, and make that difference, really be that light for someone when they're having a hard time.
If you care about this stuff, if you care about being a good leader, if you care about your people, then we need you to stay in leadership. There are so many people who aren't in leadership from those particular perspectives. There are people who are in leadership because, you know, they're climbing, or they just want to see themselves in those power positions. And if you're somebody who really, really cares, I know it's hard for you guys to work through all the complications of being a leader, but can we just say we need more people like you who care? And with that, Christine, like you were saying at the start, it makes your job harder, maybe just at first, but if you can master these skills with us, then you are going to not only feel like you are really thriving as a leader, even in difficult situations, but you'll get to know that you're truly making a big difference that has this incredible exponential domino effect with all the people who you get to touch. You can be that person who, when you walk into a room, people are uplifted by the fact that you're there. People feel more empowered by the fact that you're there. And it's not because you're the person who makes everybody happy all the time. It's not because you're the person that snaps their finger and makes their emotions go away. But instead, they know that you're the person who cares, and they know that you're the kind of person who shows up to these difficult situations, including these very human, very common, ubiquitous, and forevermore situations where they are struggling, but you're the kind of person who genuinely shows up in their presence thinking, how can I make this situation better for my people? Not because I fixed their emotion, but because I care enough to ask better questions about what this person in front of me needs from me right now. We know you can do it. We have faith. And if you have any questions about all the nuance of this, because there is a lot, please let us know down below. And we cannot wait to talk to you guys about this very important topic. We'll see you guys soon.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and